All right. Kaila, how do you say your last name?
Cutshaw.
What was that?
It's Cutshaw. My last name is Cutshaw, which is different than what's on my Facebook.
All I'm thinking is Lightning McQueen. Ka-chow. Hey there, welcome to the 7-Day Worship Podcast, episode number 3. My name is Klocek, I'm your host, and if this is the first time that we're meeting, thank you so much for coming here. If you find value in this video, please think about hitting that like button, think about subscribing and hitting that bell for some more content like this. Drop me comments to let me know how I can help you in the future with better content. Today's episode, we're gonna be talking with Kaila Cutshaw in California. Kaila wears multiple hats. She does a lot of things from children's ministry to media development at her church. And of course, she does the worship thing. So she is here today telling us a little bit about what she does week by week, how she gets rest in there, how it affects her with this COVID-19 deal that's happening with us, and what the church might even look like after this is over, as well as things that she would like to do to give you value in this community. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get to the episode. Thank you so much for coming in. Just want to make sure before we start, we just get to know you a little bit. Where are you from? Where are you from?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. But I am from California. I am currently residing in the East Bay area, so Northern California.
Okay. And what church is that over there that you serve in?
So I serve at the Rock Church. They're located in Brentwood. So
the Rock Church, where did they get their name from? Was that an inherited thing that you stepped into, or did they ever tell you?
They never explained that to me. Maybe it's in their employee handbook, not sure, but I know that they planted the church 7 years ago, and so I've just known that it's the Rock Church.
Gotcha. There was this one church that was back where I grew up and stuff, and it was called the Church That Rocks, like I was like driving by, it's this tiny little like house looking type of church, and it's just like this super like lightning bolt type of letters, the Church That Rocks. And you're just like, okay. All right. You got my
there's some serious business.
Great. And then right next to it's the other one that's saying you're all going to hell, it's like that's their advertisement. Sure. So, well, okay. So the Rock Church in California. And what do you do over there at this church?
Yeah, so I am on staff as the ministry support coordinator. And so basically it's just the name to kind of allow me to be in all different ministries. And so on Sundays, my main thing is to lead worship. But during the week, I prep for worship. I prep for children's ministry. I help lead a youth group, do graphic designing. I wear all the hats.
That's right. Yeah. Sounds like it. I mean, that's exactly what my ministry looked like before we moved out here to Washington. Over in Fort Wayne, Indiana, were 3 different hats over there: children's ministry, social media, website. I guess you would group that into one, and then the worship, of course, which is my primary that I never really got to because of all the other hats. But yeah. How do you deal with all that? What's your week look like?
Yeah, so it's not too bad. Our church is pretty, relatively small. We have 2 services, and we usually, average around 300. So it's not too difficult. But I don't work on Monday, so I have Saturday and Mondays off, and so I work Tuesday through Friday in the office, and then obviously Sunday is a big work day. And so I kind of divide my week by ministry. So one day I'll focus on worship, one day I'll focus on kids ministry, one day, graphics and everything else. And sometimes they, there's no division in days. They all kind of blend into one, and I do what I can when it's right in front of me. But it's not too bad. I mean, the children's ministry is pretty easy for me to get out of the way. I usually, try and plan for the whole month's curriculum, so that way during the week I can, as we come, I can just focus on worship. Like, what do I need to prep for that?
Yeah, man, I completely relate to that. That's exactly what I had to do over at that church, was just one day, one thing. And, it just never
Yeah.
seemed to work. It was like you have a strategy going into it, and then the week just happened and you were there. But you guys have
Yeah.
anything exciting going on? Anything new in that church right now that you guys are working towards, maybe to help you out with that leadership and that pylon that you're dealing with?
So right now, like our newest project, I think is really just trying to figure out how to do church from our homes, and so we're taking it week by week. And so our children's ministry is developing a little different, and then the worship ministry is developing different as well. I mean, we're having to learn. We went from not streaming anything to now learning how to stream and to record, and through our board, and then edit on top of it. And so we're pre-recording our services and then streaming them live on Sundays. And so right now we're able to do that on YouTube and on Facebook. So we're kind of doing it on the two different platforms. So that's kind of
Cool.
like our big project right now.
Has Facebook been bugging out with you guys lately, like dropping you and all that kind of stuff, or how's that?
It hasn't been dropping, but it has been freezing occasionally. I have noticed that YouTube is like, it's perfect. There's no complications. It's like absolutely amazing. And I think probably because most churches are utilizing Facebook, but they're just getting such an overwhelming amount of streaming all at the same time. I mean, everybody has an 11 o'clock service, everybody has a 9 a.m. service. So I think it's probably just too much for Facebook.
Yeah, it's almost like YouTube was built for that, right? And Facebook was not.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't know how that works exactly, but well, one of the big things that we're kind of going over right now with 7-day worship, and I just want to say this before we continue. 7-day worship, it's all about us just growing this community together, building a community that's really just focused on working with each other and developing each other, just all things worship. So we're just trying to get a community together that are totally vulnerable, allowing each other in, crossing those lines, and then just really focusing on, let's partner with, let's develop each other, let's do it all in the name of Christ, and let's worship together. And so anything that we have that we can help each other out with, that's what this community is going to be all about. And then the other thing that I haven't really been mentioning yet, and this is probably something that I would have asked you right before this, but about resting. God's been really working with me right now about the idea of rest. And 7-day worship is kind of like the perfect name that I didn't mean to make for that. but I was listening to this great Bible Project podcast episode where they're talking about the 7-day rest and the Sabbath. And that's just been something that's circling in my mind right now, that we need to promote rest, especially with us, as everything that we're doing with media, with children, with youth and worship in general. And it's a lot. And how do you rest, in the week? So do you have any kind of way that you regularly rest or anything, or is that something you're working on?
Yeah, so Mondays are my day where I'm like, nobody come near here, and it's not in a selfish way, but it's really just like I get so exhausted sometimes on Sundays, just from leading worship, that on Mondays I kind of need like that whole day to just really take care of myself. And so it's my quiet day where the first thing I do in the morning is I throw on, calm worship music. I crack open that Bible and I just dive in. And I've noticed that since we've been, doing the shelter in place, every day's kind of a rest day because we don't have anywhere to go. But I still notice that on Mondays are usually the days where I still have that quiet time. My kids have learned to, have that quiet time with me as well, which is something different for them. But I've also have noticed it's kind of starting to become my creative day. And so, on Mondays, I'm not just resting, but then I'm also like, hey, like I have these lyrics, I need to write this song, or I have this like painting that I feel like I need to paint, or it's just like a, creative way for God to like move through me and show me things. So it's actually a really cool way to rest and see him kind of, still reveal things, even though I'm not like working. So it's nice.
No, I see that completely. I mean, resting in any way, I think one of the game changers for me with rest is this idea of doing things that that God wants you to enjoy in life, and not just sitting there like a monk with your feet crossed and just meditating over the Bible. Like, that's something that I always thought, oh, when you're resting on Sabbath, that's what you're supposed to do. And just blew my mind, like, oh no, I'm supposed to enjoy my day. I'm supposed to like have fun with my family and like, hike or do something, get out in nature and, or play music. Like it's awesome. Just doing the thing that gives you joy and that gives God joy and delight because you're enjoying his creation, enjoying the things that he's given you. I think it's cool. And it gives you a lot more purpose when you look forward to that day. Like, I'm going to do that. Yeah. How is it with your family and doing worship on Sundays and all that kind of stuff? How do you balance that with everything else that's going on?
Yeah. So, because we pre-record our services and then we stream them live on Sundays, I get to be home and experience, service with my family, which I never get to do. I never get to see, because, let's be honest, we're on that phase of like blind you can't see anybody. Yeah. I love that, but at the same time, like I would love to be able to see my family and how they interact. And so Easter Sunday, our church did communion, and so we were able to do communion together. And I have two little boys, and my 9-year-old stood up and like worshiped, and I lost it. I was like, man, this is beautiful. I don't get to see this. I'm always the mom that's like leading worship and telling my kids to like sit down and stop running, and or you have no idea where your kids are in church. And so it's kind of nice to, see how my family reacts to the message. And it's kind of weird watching myself worship on TV. And my middle schooler likes to make fun, but other than that, it's really enjoyable to be able to enjoy church with my family home. And kind of get them inspired a little bit too to want to create things. So
that's cool. That's cool. I haven't been able to experience that yet. We've done everything live stream, and it's always been me, so I haven't had that time with them yet. But that whole pre-recording thing, I've heard so many good things when it comes to you as a family, of just being together, kind of just watching yourself and being like hands up, like it's okay, like whatever this is, that's okay. It's not perfect to me, but everybody else is okay with it. So, but then just allowing that time with your family to see yourself worship and to see them worship. And yeah, I haven't experienced that yet. I'm excited to do that one day. I don't know when.
Yeah. But it's pretty cool. I mean, my like I said, my middle schooler likes to crack jokes, and so he always says, like, well, Mom, if they really saw how you were dressed right now while watching church, I bet they'd have some comments. I'm like, okay, well, I'm allowed to be in my pajamas and watch church because, we pre-recorded ahead of time. So hopefully you'll get there to a point where you can enjoy it with your family. And it is hard for me, though, because this is totally out of my comfort zone. I don't like to be recorded. And so, I'm myself biggest critic. And so I have to kind of like remove that from myself while I'm watching church and just kind of try and be in his presence, and then really just let him, work.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I'm with you. That whole recording thing, it gets everybody, right? I love when you record your team for the first time. You say, hey guys, look at yourselves. And they're just all like faces down, and it's like, okay, nobody likes to see themselves being recorded. And you also have to have that whole idea in mind that when you're on camera, it's kind of like, you gain the 5 pounds on the camera or whatever. It's the opposite when it comes to energy. So like you lose 10 points of energy whenever you're on the camera. So you have to make that up. And it's just weird and wild and it's uncomfortable. I feel like I'm back in speech class in college, with somebody kicking me to make a reaction. And it's interesting. But I want to get to the main thing for today. Really, we're kind of circling around this topic right now in all of our communities in worship, talking about what the church is going to be like after COVID-19 is over. So we got COVID-19 that has totally blown up so many just different barriers that we have in our church. It's teaching us to relate to each other more personally as a church body in our congregations. It's making us rethink why we've done things, maybe in some churches, the way that we do them. And it's a good opportunity for us to say, what's the Spirit doing here? What is God leading us in? Because God just did this all over the world at the same time. He just blew it up. And what's he doing? And so trying to be sensitive to that. What does the church look like? Or even first, what do our roles maybe as worship leaders and pastors and teachers? What do we look like going back into church after COVID-19? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think as worship leaders, we're obviously we're on the platform, and so we're the first thing that they're going to see. We're the first thing when they walk in. They're going to see us and how we're kind of portraying ourselves, how we feel, and we're like responsible for creating that environment and that atmosphere for worship. And so if we're feeling uneasy, it's really easy to kind of create that as an atmosphere. And so I think it's really important that as the church comes in for the first time that, we put off that we're confident in our God, number one, and then creating a safe feeling environment, because it is going to be the first time where people get to come out of their shelters in place and be in a congregation of people. And so there's always going to be that fear. And I know we always talk about how fear is not from God and how we shouldn't settle in it, but we're human and people feel that. And so I think it's, our job, our role to kind of kick that out the door and just, be excited, be intentional about being positive with our relationships with the church and the congregation as they come in. So I think that that's really important, like being sensitive to, how everybody is feeling currently in their shelters in place, because everybody's dealing with it differently. And so when they come in, like emotions are going to be on high. And I feel like, we have to be, intentional about how we navigate through that.
That's great. I mean, the idea, and we talked about this a little bit earlier before we started, but the whole idea of people being so emotional coming back, the mental health repercussions of this. I think there's like a Netflix show coming out, actually. It's like In Queue. I think I saw something somewhere where the mental health of COVID-19 is like becoming a documentary or something. What those effects and ramifications are going to be, because this isolation, just being at home all the time, being away from people, being away from work, not kind of using those same addictions that we're used to, like getting into sports or social gatherings and, different scenarios that we just love and are passionate about, even the coffee house, right? So like just different stuff that we love, it's gone. And we got really the same people to talk to, if even those people. And the emotional and the kind of mental, as far as that health goes, both of those areas have a ton of impact when it comes to music. And I mean, I don't know if you've ever played for like an old folks home where you go over and you just play a song and you just see them remember, things from way, way, way back, like in the 50s or the 60s. And they're just lighting up and they're dancing and they're having fun. And then something comes back, like they come back mentally for a second. It's crazy what music does for people's mental health, for their emotional health. And with us in our world, it's spiritual health too. And so with that, we play a huge role. But we were talking about that a little bit earlier. What do you have to say about that? Like when we come back and the emotional travesties going on, people are just down in the dumps. They're looking for help. What's a way that maybe we can kind of communicate to them? We emotionally, we got your back, and mentally, we got your back with this music that we're playing for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is, with mental health is sometimes people, are afraid of that, and because it makes people uncomfortable. And so I think the biggest thing is, as worship leaders, we need to just grasp onto it and not be afraid of that.
Yeah.
And just know that, everybody is dealing with, our pastor calls them mind monsters. So everybody has their own little mind monsters that they're dealing with, and you don't know. I'm so good at, like, when somebody asks me how I'm doing, I always am like, I'm fine, I'm great. When I inside could be like a hot mess, just because I don't want to be a burden. And so I think as worship leaders, we need to just not be afraid to say, hey, it is okay how you are currently. Like, there's no right way to feel coming back into this. Everybody is going to be different. But I think it is important for us to not sit in a negative, a negative moment or an emotion, and just kind of power through it. And honestly speaking, the truth and the promises that God has for everyone over them is probably the most impactful thing. And that is something that I try to do when, I lead worship is I try to remind people like, hey, these are the promises that he has said over you. And even though, yeah, we all know them and we read about them all the time, like sometimes when we say them over ourselves, it's totally different than just reading it over and over again. And so I think just speaking that truth, speaking those promises over people and just, saying, hey, it is okay to not be okay right now. I think those are like the key components.
Yeah, and I think of mental health too. Like that phrase gets really, really bad rap. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's no different than physical health, and there's the different aspects of it too, where it's a high anxiety to the point where you can't focus, where you're getting like you can't move, breathing difficulty, right? Like that's anxiety. And when we say mental health, it doesn't usually fall in that same class as I'm really anxious, or I'm really depressed. I'm just super sad and lonely and I feel isolated. And it's okay. Like you're saying, it's okay to be there. Guess what? We got Jesus,
Yeah.
and Jesus is the one who came to rescue you out of the current state of life that we live in that is just not healthy. And we're going to live in that until we join him one day. I just read in John today where Jesus is talking to Peter before he denies, right? And right after Judas leaves, he's saying, guys, I'm going away, I'm going away where you can't follow. And Peter's just like, what? No, I'll follow you anywhere. And Jesus just responds, no, you're not coming with me. In fact, you're going to do this. And he talks about him denying him. But Jesus was just saying, you're not coming yet, but you will follow me one day. And we're going to get to that kingdom, but we're not there yet. We're still living in a broken world with broken realities. And while we're here and we are all broken, it's okay for me to say to somebody who's asking, how are you doing? Not doing well. Not doing well. James 5 tells us that we're supposed to confess our sins to each other so we can pray for each other, and provide healing. Like that's something that we're supposed to do for each other in the church. And we can't do that unless we're vulnerable. We can't do that unless we allow ourselves to say, I'm not okay. Can you pray for me? I love that. So what does the church look like in general? Or actually, let's get away from that. I think we've been talking about the church more than anything. Zoning back in on our role, kind of as worship leaders and stuff, where do we fit in with this emotional? And you touched a little bit on it. I want you to expound on that a little bit. You're talking about us serving that role of helping them with that stability and everything. But any more thoughts with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier, but on the emotional aspect, when a female is leading versus a male leading, I think sometimes females are a little bit more emotional than males are. And so I know for myself, I have to really check my feelings before I step out onto that platform, just like I would any other Sunday. But I feel like coming back from COVID that I'm really going to have to like not only check, but double check and you know, just let the church know that, hey, I'm okay. And I'm okay because I trust God. And I know without a doubt that he's got his hands all over this. And, there's a reason for it. And so I feel like, I think just for us, we have to make sure that, we're not an emotional hot mess and that we, really focus on what he wants us to, how he wants us to lead on the platform and just that atmosphere, like building, what does that look like? Because I'm telling you, when we all come back from the shelter in place and we worship together in person, it's going to be incredible.
Yeah. And music does something too. I mean, biologically, that's proven that when you're in a crowd singing a song together, that it makes you happy. It provides
Yeah.
joy, in the happy sense of that word. And that's just a biology thing. We know that when we group up together, and we're void of that right now. We don't have that. So it's, yeah. No, that's fantastic. I wanted to talk about one more thing before you go. Just tell us about, in 7-day worship, we're trying to, again, be that community who's just coming together. We're cooperating with each other, and we're working together to develop each other in all things worship. So when we do that, we have everybody on this podcast saying, I'm available to help in this way or that way. if you reach out to me. What's something that if people want to connect with you, what's something that you can provide value for with them that you would like to help them out with in their church or in their ministry?
Yeah, so I think because we're such a small church and I have to wear multiple hats that right now with our shelter in place, we're so fixated on the social media platform that I've had to really push myself a little bit more in my creativeness. And so I create slides and graphics and intro videos and all kinds of stuff and content. And so if anybody needs help, in my area, and not even in my area, because that's something that you could totally do, via Zoom or, just through Facebook. But if anybody needs access, I can show them free programs that I use, to create these things and, just different programs that are pretty inexpensive that provide stuff. If anybody needs help with, creating that social media look for their Facebook or whatever, I would absolutely be more than happy to help.
That's awesome. So if anybody needs anything from you, it would have to do with media help, whether that's slides, presentations, social media, just you are the guru at that. Is that kind of what we're saying here?
Yeah. I mean, bear with me. I didn't
Just kidding. I'm not going to say it up like that.
But I think, it's pretty easy. The programs that I use are very user friendly. So definitely can help out in some aspect, I hope.
Fantastic. And I remember when I first started trying to figure this stuff out too, as far as recording, social media, all this like Photoshop, Premiere, and, now I'm using Final Cut, like all these types of things, just super intimidating. Like, how do I do this? But it's really not that hard. Once you get the basics and especially on these free resources, they're usually super user friendly. And I'm sure you'll do an awesome job with that. So if people want to connect with you and they want to contact you over these things and maybe even just talk more about this whole idea of what happens with church after COVID-19, but especially with this stuff with media and help with that, how can they connect with you? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
I think the best way to contact me would just be through email. I check it pretty often, pretty much every day, considering that I'm still working, so I'm not working. So if they want to reach out to me via email, I can absolutely help them out.
Okay. And so what's that email for them?
Yeah, so it's Kaila Cutshaw, so KAILA @rockchurch.co.
Okay.
So it's not .com, it's .co. A lot of people.
That's going to throw a lot of people off. Okay.
It is, but it's a new thing. So apparently, I don't know. I think it's a California thing. I don't know.
Okay, so .co. We'll clarify that. I'll even put in parentheses or something down here, it is .co. I'll get that mistake. Okay. Well, then we'll have people get in contact with you that way. Do you have any final thoughts for us before we get off the call for today? Anything you just want to say to people out there to encourage them in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I want to encourage everybody out there that, we're all learning. So don't feel discouraged if, you're not doing anything. If social media is difficult for you, that's okay. If streaming is difficult for you, that's okay. You're not perfect. I mean, our main goal is to spread Christ's love throughout the world. And so as long as you can do that, I think no matter what way you do it, it's going to be amazing. And so just be encouraged. Don't be discouraged, and hope everyone's healthy, happy, and safe.
Amen. That's so good. We are doing this for Christ, and that's the only thing that matters. That's so good. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Kaila. Appreciate having you here, and we'll be in touch with you soon.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for staying for this episode with Kaila Cutshaw. She is awesome, and she's doing some great things out there in California. It's awesome to see people who are wearing multiple hats and have developed their skills and now want to be able to share that knowledge with you. If you want to get in contact with her, hit that link in the description below where her email is at. I'll also put it in here so you can type it out. But make sure you contact her. If you do have some other things you would like to talk about, make sure you hit me up as well. I'll have my email in the links below as well. Or give me a comment on this video so I can know how to provide you with great value in the future to come. Hit that like button, subscribe, share this with a friend, and we will see you next week.